up, Oasis people? Let's go. Back in the podcast studio after a week of change.
What do you call that dance?
It's the young people call it the gritty.
It's called the Kirko chains.
The Kirko chains. Spoken like a true Viking believer.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome back to the podcast, Ben.
It's good to be back. Feel like home. Feel like I've been just welcomed home really well.
Awesome.
Good.
That's good.
Miss
We're
you
glad.
guys.
You took a trip to New York last week.
Yeah.
So
That was
he's
a
been
trip.
World traveler.
Just a Renaissance man.
So we're glad to have another featured guest this week by the name of Ben Geetson. Okay, we're talking about being ready for marriage. We're going to get into that in a second. But what is something you were not ready for?
We planned that while Brennen was out in the room.
What is something you are not ready for?
For those listening, Ben just reached over and pulled the lever on Brennan's chair so it lowered.
Yeah.
You still miss me?
Yes, I'm glad you're here.
Brennen wasn't ready for
Don't
it.
touch my chair. What's something you guys are in your past life, in your life? What is something you feel like you were not ready for, but yet it happened to you?
Are you doing something lighthearted and,
Yeah, are you
and
going
funny,
serious
or
or
are you
funny?
going like,
No, you do what you need to do.
oh boy, who's going first?
Go ahead. Take it.
Okay. I was not ready for a middle schooler to ask me in a sermon what pornography is.
While you were preaching?
No, I wasn't preaching. I was sitting next to a student.
someone
While somebody
was.
else was preaching. What pornography is, and in the same message, what circumcision was.
Oh, yeah.
I was not ready.
That's
I didn't
real.
know how to process what to do.
Middle schoolers be asking.
Oh, yeah. There's no shame.
No, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's probably the best place to ask, too, but
Yeah,
That means comfortability. There's trust.
I wasn't ready.
I wasn't ready. What'd you say again? How did you answer? Did you explain it?
I don't remember what I said.
Well, we've had...
You say
Yeah.
pornography is the wallpaper of our society.
I think I said something like pornography was like looking at inappropriate stuff online.
You didn't go.
I didn't go too in depth because obviously they didn't know very much.
Yeah.
And I think for circumcision, I said it was like an Old Testament practice of like being committed to God.
Oh, wow. She swerved that one completely.
Well, it was like
That's
like the
technically
person
true.
was preaching, and I was like,
We can't do this right now.
I was like, I don't have
You
time.
pulled
to
out your phone. You said, let me
unpack
get this
go-
diagram real quick.
You didn't go. You didn't go Amy Poehler on it for Parks and Rec. I can't explain pornography, but I know it when I see
know it
it.
when I see it.
Oh, goodness. For me, the thing I was not ready for is today in Brookings, it snowed.
Yeah.
And last week, what was it? Friday, Saturday? It snowed,
Yeah,
but it
but
was
it was
like the
just
little
rain,
flurries,
basically.
and it didn't stay on the ground.
Yeah.
Today, it actually
Here.
snowed. It's less than an inch, and it's already melted on most roads that are getting driven on, but it is in the grass, and it has
And it's
made
white.
the green grass disappear. It's here, and I don't think I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
Like-
I'm a
Likewise.
big okay. December 24th, it wants to do this. Fine.
no
Same.
snow ever. Please.
November
I'd be fine with that.
15th. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had the world's most gorgeous October.
The fall that
Yeah.
just to
had.
get absolutely smacked in
Yeah,
November.
it's cold this week, which is okay.
It's like, it was like sweeten it up before they just destroyed us.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Sour Patch Kid style.
I was not ready. Ben, what about you?
As I get older, this happens to me more and
I'm
more, and
nervous.
I'm never ready for it.
Oh boy.
But anytime that I fart and poop comes out,
Oh
it's
no!
happening more and more.
No, it hasn't.
My stomach is
Happening
not.
more and more.
My stomach has not been able to handle cheese over the last like 6 months to a year as much as I used to be. So it's like now I have to be careful. I have to go to the bathroom if I want to fart because I don't know if something else is going to come out. I'm dead serious.
Wow,
It's awful.
Wow,
I'm
getting old.
only 35. Like this is I'm
that does not
You
bode
got, like,
well for
20
your
years left,
65-year-old.
well. That's why that's why I've laid out over the last 5 years since you guys have known 4 years since you guys have known me laid out. I'm gonna have an early death.
Yeah.
So you guys,
You better,
Just
or
decay
else
way faster than everybody else.
this guy's gonna be depends.
Reverse Benjamin Buttons.
He's gonna be depends by 40.
I might need them now by 40. I don't have
Oh,
any.
that is tough.
Oh,
man.
it's hard. It's tough.
Wow.
Because it's unexpected. You're not ready for it.
You're not ready.
And here's the thing: the people who've said they've never sharded, stop. You have. Everyone's done it by accident, in sickness, whatever. You've done it. As you get older, you just gotta be more careful.
There you go.
That's good. That's good wisdom. Thank you for opening us.
Drop
up.
in the comments if you were late.
Yeah.
How many times have you guys done it this week? Let us know.
All right.
Derailed very fast.
We got it. We got to fix this. So we are going to do a relationship series in the spring. We're doing it a little bit different. It's going to be called XOXO, and we're going to talk.
That's smart.
Yeah, it's good. Some romantic stuff, but also some friendship, some family relationship stuff. So it's going to be a little bit more than just a romantic dating series. But we wanted to swing around and hit this topic because we haven't talked about it in a set. We haven't talked about romantic relationships in a little bit. So we're going to address today the specific question, am I ready for marriage? And we get this question a lot of times from dating couples who are thinking about future decisions. And we have said 1,000 times on the podcast or at Oasis in person that we believe dating is for the purpose of pursuing marriage. And so in the natural rhythm of dating, this question should come up. If it doesn't, then we would, I mean, it depends on what age you are. You know, if you're like a 14-year-old and you've been dating for 2 years, we would maybe say you shouldn't be dating. But at that point, it's like, maybe you shouldn't be thinking, am I ready for marriage?
We're super against high school dating relationships. They never work out.
Yeah.
I'm not super against it, but I would advise, I started dating my wife as a senior, but I would advise against it in most situations. So anyways, but as in the natural progression of dating, you should be progressing towards marriage.
That's ideally the question you're asking.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the question you should be asking. But even though it's a good question to ask, it can be a confusing one. Mm-hmm. Right, because it's like with anything when you say, am I ready?
Yeah.
The joking, semi-serious answer is no.
No, you're not.
Right?
And that's okay.
When I got married, I was not ready.
You thought you were ready in some ways.
And in some ways I was.
Yes.
You know, but to answer this question confidently, to say, am I ready? Like your answer is never going to be yes. Yeah. Like you cannot say 100% confidently you are ready for all the challenges and the struggles and the hardships that marriage will throw at you. Yep. Yeah. You're not ready for that. You never will be. But that's where we're going to come into this question, and we're going to talk about what it looks like to be ready enough, what it looks like to have some questions answered, to have some boxes checked to show, okay, I'm not 100% ready, but I'm ready enough to pursue that next step of marriage. It's kind of like the same thing with parenting, you know?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's the first kid or the fourth.
But seriously, I have a lot of friends who are currently getting pregnant, having babies, different things, and I keep sitting back thinking, I will never be ready for this. I won't. I haven't even held any of their kids. Like, there's been some times that
you've held Otis when he was a baby.
You forced me.
Yep, 100%.
We were in the office, and he said, here, hold my kid.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, and he was hot, and like you could tell he was uncomfortable, and I was probably a little uncomfortable.
The baby doesn't
like
know
cats.
if they're uncomfortable.
They know when you don't like
he was
them.
squirming. I liked him. I love Otis.
Otis is
I love
great.
him.
Yeah.
But babies are just, I'm not there yet.
It's going to happen
ready.
with the next one too, so be ready.
Yeah.
So we have 3/4 checks that we would say, categories that we would say, these are things you should be evaluating and answering as you answer the question, am I ready for marriage?
Yeah.
Number
one, character development. Just who you are as a person, what you do as a person. Are you the person that you need to be able to get married?
Yeah.
Is kind of the question that we would ask. So it's character flows from just who you are as a person. And we would say that character is best formed in connection and relationship with Jesus. Yep. So if identity or understanding and recognizing, man, I'm a son and daughter of God, is what I'm doing reflect that? And how am I pursuing those things? So character, best formed through connection with Jesus. Am I faithfully following Jesus, especially the things I know I'm supposed to be doing. Those simple, small, obedient things that I know I'm supposed to do. Am I pursuing him personally in community, becoming more like him in character and competency, stuff like that? And then, I mean, the obvious one is just sin.
Yeah.
Like what sin, struggles, things like that are present in your life that you need to be dealing with, that you need to seek transformation, healing, confession. Like, are these questions things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I want to kind of break a couple of these questions down even a little bit. Like the first one where we say, are you a faithful Jesus follower? If someone's sitting there listening thinking, yes, ? Or they're like, I think so. Or like, what would we say is the mark of a faithful Jesus follower where they could confidently answer this question? Yeah, my character is good there.
Oh. I thought you were asking him. So
it doesn't matter. Whoever.
Just open.
You were looking at him. So
I'm tossing it up. It's
there
this.
you
I'm
go.
gonna hit your chair again.
No.
All right. The question.
What are
Ask it again. Sorry.
That's my fault.
If you're we're asking the question, the first thing that we would say in your character development before you're ready to get married is you need to be a faithful follower of Jesus. How does someone listening know if they've accomplished that or not?
Yeah, a big way to check, and we've talked about this before, is the Holy Spirit present in your life? And so ways that you can kind of see that are the fruits of the Spirit appearing in your life. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Are those being produced in your life? Are you seeing those fruits in who you are as a person, how you interact with people, how you interact in the world.
Yeah. And then the second question we said is, are you actively pursuing him both personally and communally?
That to me is a big check mark on how do I know if I'm being a faithful follower of Jesus?
Yeah.
Am I actually pursuing my relationship with him individually? Right? What does it look like individually in my own relationship with God, but also community, which is like a command.
Yeah.
Obedience to like, hey, we do not give up gathering together. Like, am I doing that?
I remember 2-3 years ago, I don't remember exactly which year it was. It was probably 3 years ago at this point. There was a message I was preaching on dating, and I said, and I still will stick to this, that I would not encourage you to date someone who's not actively involved in a small group.
I know
it's a hot take. I know it's a hot take, but like if you take your discipleship seriously,
I think it's
if you truly want to become like Jesus, it's not just about your personal pursuit or your corporate pursuit. Like it's not just Sunday nights or Monday, Tuesday mornings. Like it's, am I willing to walk alongside other believers to help them shape me and me shape them? And the best way that happens is in small groups. And I understand there's a lot of reasons someone might not be in a small group. But, and I would say, and I would hear them out. That's why it's not like a be-all, end-all.
It's not a black and white.
Yeah, but for a good starting place, if you're trying to pursue a Christian relationship, or if you're sitting back thinking, am I a faithful follower of Jesus, but you've never taken steps to find community and to live in like a Bible-centered group, like a small group, to me, it's like, that's a red flag for me. Otherwise,
especially if you have the time, that's where discernment.
And I get some people don't have the time, but then it becomes down to priorities. Like, what are you choosing to give your time to? So then when you look at your faithful following of Jesus, like if he's the 6th, 7th priority on your Tuesday nights, then it's like, are you faithfully following him?
That's a good question.
Good question.
The other one that I really want to dive into is what sin or struggles are present in your life that maybe need to get dealt with. I think this is an interesting part of the character development, because we'll talk in a second that in each of these areas, when it comes to the fruit of the Spirit, of the 1 Corinthians passage we're about to read, the goal isn't perfection. Well, the goal is perfection, but the reality is you won't be perfect in order to get married. Like, you're trying to pursue this reality. You're trying to pursue being like Christ, but you won't be perfectly like Christ. And if that's your mark, you won't ever get married because you're not going to quite reach it. But what is maybe a sin struggle or like something that's glaring that should be dealt with before maybe pursuing marriage? Is there things we'd toss out as examples or a blanket statement that would help guide people in that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go to the 1 Peter text.
Okay.
I should have had it. You guys can talk first if you want, but I'm going to pull it up here real quick.
I don't know where he's exactly going with this, but I would say like there's some things that are maybe addictive. Some things that are really strongholds in people's lives: alcoholism, pornography addiction, severe, like negative thinking patterns, not in the sense of like the medical side, like we've talked about before, but if someone isn't able to live in the freedom and the joy that Jesus has called them to, and they haven't personally made those choices, like those are red flags to me where it's like, okay, you maybe should deal with those things before you decide that marriage is the next step for you.
That's good. Yeah. The big ones.
Big. I mean, really big glaring things where it's like, okay, you're not over that. And to step into marriage, you really want to be at your best sense of health, because that's how you want to come into marriage. And so maybe you take 6 months to a year to really rid yourself of that sin, and you do everything possible to get rid of that sin so that you're ready to step into marriage.
Yeah, that's good.
Were you gonna?
I mean, just 1 Peter 2, rid yourselves of malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander.
Yeah.
And just the idea of that in my head is, do I hate people? Like, do I? And it's not, I don't like being around people all the time. It's not an introvert extrovert thing.
Yeah.
It's like, do I actually disdain people? Because there are people who just like, they think they can be married and be intimate relationship, not just in marriage, but just in friendship. But like, you really don't like people. So it's an aspect of just checking that in your own self.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot with people I know. It's for guys, this is a thing. Like, I don't like people. I don't like being around people. And it's not even, it's just, how are you going to like being, that's going to seep into your marriage. It just is.
Yeah.
So that's something I think through. And that's maybe just a recent one because of a relationship I have with someone. But
yeah. And the 1 Corinthians 13 text is commonly referred to as like the love passage. It's where Paul breaks down what love looks like. It's used a lot of times in weddings. But when you look at that passage, it can be read at weddings because pastors will point to that as what it looks like to love and to care for your spouse. So things from there that we would say, you should be checking. Does your life resemble these things? Are you patient? Are you kind? Do you struggle with envy or boastfulness or pride? Are you honoring and serving other people? Are you slow to anger and quick to forgive? Do you protect? Are you trustworthy? Are you hope-filled? And are you willing to fight for the relationship? Yeah. Like if those things are areas you're focused on and growing in, even though you're not perfect, it's like, yeah, character, you're there. But if you're like, oh man, I'm really quick to anger and I haven't dealt with it, maybe it's time to take time to deal with it before you step into this covenant relationship.
Yeah.
Any other thing character-wise before we jump to the next one? All right.
Again, I think just it needs to be reiterated. It's not perfection in these things.
Yeah.
It's in my pursuing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's the most important piece maybe in the 3 or 4 that we'll lay out. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, there's a reality in like self-care is so stinking important, especially like just in general.
Yeah.
But like, so if I'm not pursuing what Jesus desires for me to pursue, if I'm not setting myself up to grow in character of Jesus, it's like, that's a self-care thing.
Yeah.
And self-care may not be the right language.
Yeah.
But just if I'm not pursuing holistic health in general, especially spiritual health, it's like that's going to, again, affect my marriage or my relationships.
Well, and the piece why I say character is maybe the most important out of all of them is because you get into some of the nuanced questions that people will ask where it's like, well, am I ready to live with someone? It's like, oh, if you're a person of high character, you can live with someone. Like, am I ready to love and to care and to serve someone all the time? Like, they're going to be there 100% of the time, 24/7. Like, if you're a person of high character, you'll learn. You know, like when I step into marriage, I know there's going to be flaws and hardships. I know there's going to be things I'm not good at, but I'm willing through my pursuit of Jesus to get better at those things. So it's the character piece is so key. Because if your connection to Jesus is vibrant, your marriage will follow that, even through some of the hardship stuff.
Yeah.
Number 2, we would say, is community affirmation. Let me dive into that.
Yeah. So the second piece to answer the question, are you ready for marriage, is do you have a community affirmation that you are? So does your community support that you are a person who's ready to be married?
Yeah.
So have you asked your parents, your friends, your pastors, or other key people in your life about what they see in your character, about who they see you are as a person? And do they affirm and say, yeah, you are a person who's ready to be married? But then also, if you're in a dating relationship, you can take that a step further and ask that of the person you're with. But then also, if you've dated in community and with friends who've been around you or mentors who are familiar with both of you, they can even answer that question a little bit more intentionally because they know both of you.
Yeah.
And so dating community can be a huge benefit to you when you're trying to answer this question, because the people around you, they know your significant other, they know how you interact with each other, how you love and care for each other or don't. And so the answers that they can give in this, whether it's a yes or a no, can be really enlightening. If they say no, obviously, like, you need to wade into that. If there's an uncertainty, like I'm not sure, yes or a no, like that should be a red flag to stop and say and to ask questions and to probe into that and to even wrestle with maybe what some of their answers are. And like we already said, like, communal living is a command of God, that we're not to live alone. And we see that modeled in people all throughout Scripture, from how God created mankind with Adam and Eve to even King David, and Jesus set that example, and all of these people throughout the New Testament, of how communal living is so key to continual pursuit of faith and to even building up our character. And so live in community and allow that to then speak into this question of whether or not you're actually ready to be married.
Yeah, that's good.
And when we're talking about living or dating in community, I think that can get vague for some people. They're like, how do I do that? What would you say is like, how can someone right now evaluate, have I dated in community or how could I date in community?
Yeah. Do your friends know your significant other? Have you spent time with that? Do you hang out together in group settings where the people in your life, especially the ones you trust who can speak?
Well, we can't Netflix and chill when all the other guys are around.
Exactly. But can you have your friends over to play games together and they see how you interact, and are you disingenuous then when your community's around? Do you treat your significant other differently?
Yeah. Are you a different
person? Which to me is one of the biggest hesitations that people don't want to date in community.
Yeah.
It's because they don't want their friend who know them well to realize, oh, I do act different in front of this person.
Yeah.
So like here, one of the biggest things for me and Abby, at least for me in dating in community, is my friends notice, because I had interest in other girls before I started dating Abby, but I acted different around those other girls when I was with my friends. There was a freedom of myself when I started really dating Abby that they, like, my friends noticed, you are more yourself around this girl than any other girl you've shown interest in. And that I couldn't have done that if we didn't spend time together, if we didn't be intentional in being with both friend groups.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, and for me, actually, I remember a moment where Allie called me out on it because I didn't even know that I was actually more authentic with her than I was with some of my friends. Yeah. And these were friends who didn't know Jesus. And so I had changed who I was and was changing consistently who I was in Christ, and they were wrestling with that too. But she would get around me where I was around some of them, and I would talk different or act different, or like, and we would get alone, and she's like, "What was that?" Right? And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "You were just different." And it was a red flag for me on how I interacted with that community, and it can go vice versa. So it happens in both ways. But date in community, that's really good. If you're not dating in community, that's a red flag. Like if you don't have anybody,
only spend time with each other ever.
And you don't have anybody that can actually confidently say yes or no to that, that's a red flag to us. You should have those people and start right now dating in community. Otherwise, the hard part is like when people have a desire to get married or to do anything, they're going to do everything possible to make that desire come to fruition. There's a quote out there, I don't remember who it is, but they say, when I want something the most, I trust myself the least, because we'll do anything possible to rearrange and to skew the data and to make it look like this is the right option because that's what we want to do. So here the tendency is, okay, I'm asking for community support, but I'm only asking the people who I know will affirm my position and my decision. So we'll go to friends, we'll go to certain family members, we'll ask, and we'll say, hey, you think I'm ready for marriage? But you know based on who they are and their personality that they'll tell you yes regardless. So you intentionally avoid maybe the friend who speaks honest truth that you don't like, or the parent who you're like, I know they have hesitations about me or this relationship, and so you just don't ask that parent. What would we say about something like that? How does someone process through that? Why would that be unhealthy? Those things.
Why would it be unhealthy to only get affirmation from people who you
find they probably aren't able to sit back and think, oh, I'm purposely trying to only get affirmation.
Okay. So re-ask the question. I'm trying to get what the actual question was, because I agree
it's just
with what you're saying.
The struggle of like why that's so difficult is because you need those people in your life who will tell you hard truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of people lack that.
Okay. So that's what's hard, is that people just lack it.
They lack it or they avoid it.
Yeah.
So you have someone who speaks hard truth, but then you call them judgmental and you cut them off from your relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that time and time again. Someone has said something in love to a Christian brother and sister, but then we cut them off and say, well, just because what you said I didn't like it, I didn't agree with it.
Yeah.
So it's not that those people don't exist.
Yeah.
They get phased out very quickly in the relational process because they're truth speakers and we don't like hearing truth.
Yeah.
So I think it's an even greater red flag that if you don't have those people in your life, because there's a good chance you either have never sought out true, authentic criticism and feedback, or you phased out the people who ever gave it to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Third one?
Yeah.
All right. Third one, relationship clarity. Why don't you go for that?
Yeah. I think we say the whole purpose of dating is to lead toward marriage, and we define it, which Ben Stewart defines it this way, of dating is for evaluation. And some of the evaluation that you're doing, at least aspects of it, are to recognize and see, okay, does this relationship work? Can it? What am I evaluating? Hey, do they love Jesus? So it's yes, do I love Jesus? My own character. What is their own relationship with Jesus? So it's answering different questions like this. Are they a person of character?
Yeah.
I think something that this was should be the number one for followers of Jesus. And so for me, it was, I look at Abby and I've recognized in our dating relationship, it was really clear, not just because she went to church, that she really loved Jesus. It was the other relationships she was pursuing, the way that she would, just how she prioritized her time around her faith, not vice versa. But then also just like there was how do you evaluate character? Fruits of the Spirit. Yeah. She's the kindest, most gentle person that I was just able to be around. And I think that's what allowed me to be more free and be myself. But that's aspects of what you're evaluating. Like, do they love Jesus? Where's their character in Jesus?
And then the other one, I think, we got a handful here, but one that I think is really important is, how do they do conflict? I'll sit with couples who, it's two ends of the spectrum. They either fight all the time. There's some couples that do it really well, or they don't fight at all.
I don't know is there any couple that actually does healthy conflict pre-marriage?
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe, but it's not the fact that you have to do conflict perfectly.
Agreed.
You have to know how they do conflict.
Yes.
So you have
to know. Yeah, that's good. That is
so
good clarification.
For my wife and I, we had never had really an argument before we got married. Like nothing. Like some very silly like conversations at most. No heated tempers at all. Like we just hadn't had that. And someone came up and they're like, "Hey, that's a red flag because like you don't know like when she gets mad what it's." And I was like, "No. I know what it looks like when she gets mad." You know, because I saw her have conflict with other people, with parents, with siblings, with friends, and so I knew how she handled conflict. She knew how I handled conflict, and just because we hadn't done it together didn't mean we didn't know. So you have to at least have that evaluative process. Yes. Some people say it's good if you and your significant other have a fight or a dispute because then you know that you're willing to work through it. You know what it looks like to fight for the relationship instead of fight against each other. Yeah. But as long as I say you know how they handle conflict and you know that they try in their best to do it the healthiest way possible, that to me is a big evaluative question.
Yeah. That's super good.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, are they willing to forgive others?
Forgiveness, I'd say, is probably at the top. There's
a pastor, he helps run the porch. Why am I blanking his name? Help me here. David Marvin.
David. His name's David.
His name's David. He, on a podcast I listened to once, said he won't marry a couple unless they have forgiven all the people who are in their life. So he sits in premarital and he has couples say, "Hey, who is someone you haven't forgiven?" And if they're able to bring someone to the table and say, "Hey, this is someone I'm still holding bitterness to," he says, before our next session, I want you to go to that person and offer them forgiveness and truly start to process and do that. Because he says, if you won't, then you're carrying that trait where you're willing to hold bitterness and anger into marriage, and marriage only works between two people who are willing to forgive each other, because you will be hurt by your spouse. They're going to do things that upset you or frustrate you or wound you in some ways. And if you have a tendency towards unforgiveness, if you have a habit and a practice where you don't forgive, that's a really, really tough thing to bring into marriage. So I think he says it kind of hyperbolically, like I don't know if he was like, "I will not marry you." But
I think it's a healthy check.
Yeah.
Yep. I think the family dynamic thing is important. Just again, it's not they have to have come from a healthy background or a healthy family. It's just a realization. Do you know where they're coming from? I had a conversation with Abby's dad because she told him what my background was like.
Oh yeah.
And so he's just like, what are you bringing into? He didn't ask it like this. He asked a lot of questions that got to this. What are you bringing into from your family background into this marriage with my daughter? And it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like you've said on the podcast before, but you didn't come from the perfect family or the perfect marriage model, or like you just had some hardship growing up. And so it's for Abby, it wasn't that she had to be marrying into a perfect family, because I think that's something like you look, and for me, I got really lucky. I love my in-laws. You know, it works great. She loves my family, and like we're able to hang out together. And like, but that's not always the case. Correct. I have some friends who in-laws, like it doesn't work. It's not healthy. But that didn't stop them from getting married. So how do you find that line of where it's like, oh, I ideally I want a family that I can marry into and be a part of, but that might not always be the case.
I'm not getting married to her family. I mean, really, that was the ultimate question she had to wrestle with a little bit, and understands like she's not getting married to my family. She's getting married to me. Now, what comes along with that is my family. Yeah. And so but the priority is our marriage. Yeah. So we are figuring out what is the dynamic of the relationship with both families. I mean, you got to figure out both families, good or bad.
Yeah.
But I would say don't have it be a priority that you have to marry someone coming from the ideal family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not marrying the family, you're marrying into it, which isn't real. And there's relational dynamics that are real. It's just understanding.
Yeah. It's just recognizing it. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah. Another one is, I think, it seems obvious, but not a lot of people think about it. Do you enjoy being their friend?
Yeah.
Like, are you friends? Can you spend time together?
Yes.
And enjoy it? And
that
I was going to go somewhere. I'm not.
No, it's huge.
Well, it's like so the 5 love language test.
What's that?
You know it. Come on. Gary Chapman, the GOAT. I don't know if he's the greatest of all time, but he's got some good stuff out there.
Great stuff
out there. He does the 5 love languages, and when we were dating, we took this, and surprisingly, physical touch was pretty high on mine.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
When we were dating, when Allie and I took it, physical touch was in my top 2. We got married. Physical touch is not in my top 2. And so there was something about our dating relationship where I found her attractive, and there was things I was feeling as a person that, but like if that would have been the way I communicated love and that would have been the core piece of our relationship, then when that fades in me or I don't have that same quite desire, when you're married, it's like, okay, now how do we supplement that?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the, I think the best reason. I'm trying to think. One of the really good reasons. Let me not go to such extremes for abstaining from sex prior to marriage is because there's this intimacy that you now have to cultivate through words, through connection, and through relationship. That because you're not cultivating it sexually. Yeah. So you abstain sexually from having this depth of your relationship, and you have to form it in other ways so that you can get to the point where you have this deep relationship where you feel like you're ready to get married. And that's friendship. Yeah. I mean, that's true, authentic love. And then the sexual piece in marriage gets added in, and it just adds a whole nother level of intimacy and love.
And I think of I'm not married, so I can't say this from experience, but a lot of life is just doing the mundane. And so a lot of marriage is doing the mundane together. Yeah. So 100%. Can you
99%.
1,000%.
That's what I heard a pastor say,
can you do the mundane, or do you enjoy just sitting and doing nothing together? Yeah.
Correct.
Totally. Are you friends?
I heard a pastor say you're probably having sex in marriage 1% of the time. And that's maybe even highballing it. This guy maybe was, I don't know. He was saying 1% of the time. So 99% of the time, what you're doing with them is just simply the mundane. Yes. And so you better like the 99% too. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. That's Allie and I on Sunday did a puzzle for 2 hours. And I need to like her while we're doing that.
Correct. Actually enjoy spending time.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yep. Because what happens a lot even is couples will get married because not a lot of Christian relationships have long dating and engagement periods. Some do. Yeah. And we're not saying there has to be there's not a perfect timeline. But it's if they're shorter, you haven't spent a lot of time potentially cultivating that friendship or you thought you had, and then you get married, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a rhythm because you haven't really figured out how to have a conversation with each other on spending your own time. So it's they'll go to this space and spend a couple hours there. I'll go over here, and you don't spend time with each other. And that's also when you're forced to, or when you should be. It's you don't know what to do. So the friendship thing is huge.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what Timothy Keller in his book The Meaning of Marriage talks about repeatedly, is this idea of Christian friendship, and the best marriages are between two people who are best friends. And in that, say you get into that space and you're like, I don't necessarily feel about this person in marriage the way I felt prior to it. I don't know if we had the relationship, the friendship that I thought we had. The answer to that is commitment. Yeah. That's the final question that you need to gain in a relationship clarity is this person willing to commit and to fight for me for the rest of their life? Yeah. If you can answer that question, all of the other things that will come up, you'll be able to deal with. Yep. Every single thing from even a character issue to those, you can deal with those things if you're willing to commit to the relationship and fight for it and sacrifice for it and serve one another.
And it cannot commit to them. Yeah. It's both. It's got to be mutual.
Oh yeah, totally.
Which is what the covenant is. We talk a ton about covenant in marriage and the importance of that, and how marriage is a relationship, established by God. It's intended to be permanent. It's not just an agreement or a contract between two humans. Literally, the covenant is a declaration before God and to your spouse that I'm going to commit to loving you, choosing to love you every single day, no matter what. So when we are pissed at each other and when you can't stand being around me, like me and Abby have experienced for long periods of time, it's no, I go back to the covenant. I said I was going to commit. Because we remember, even when times are really hard or difficult, I remember, I know they still love Jesus. And so I'm going to remember that and see that. Yeah. And even if faith is hard or struggling or pursuing Jesus is really hard, we're going to do this together. So the idea of the team idea is so real. Yeah.
Well, I mean, anytime you find yourself in an uncomfortable, hard situation, as humans, we're constantly trying to alleviate suffering and pain. Yeah. And so if you're in marriage and you find yourself in that hard spot, your natural tendency will be to alleviate suffering and pain. And for some people, that's divorce. Yeah. They think this is the option, this is the way, separation and divorce, so that is my way. But there's other ways to alleviate that suffering and pain, and it's fighting for your marriage. Yeah, you work So if you're within the confines of marriage, it's okay, this is terrible, but yet we're going to figure it out. Yeah. Because that's what it means to submit to the covenant. Yeah. Lastly, the fourth section, I mean, it's kind of like half a section, maybe even that, are just some practical checks that we would say before, to answer the question, are you ready to get married? We would say these are 3 things that we think you should think about. Want to take one?
I will
Go
take,
for it.
I think your future is important. Recognizing and having the conversations during your dating just period of like, what does the future hold? What do I want to do for a career? Do I really want to live somewhere different than where I am now? What is that place? And by having that conversation, what you're doing is you're saying to each other, you're setting up just an expectation of what the future looks like. So if one person wants to be in California and like, I'm going to move to California to live there, and the other person's like, I'm not moving to California, that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
So it's like,
If there's no compromise.
then you shouldn't get married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Period. Yep. So your future plans is important.
Oh yeah. I mean, even like a lot of people listening are college students, and so where you go to grad school matters. If you can't agree on that with your significant other, then maybe if that's a sign of character, honestly, that you're not willing to compromise or sacrifice for that other person. What would you think?
Yeah. Additionally, I mean, an important aspect is, are you financially stable? So what does your debt look like? What is income going to look like? Are you going to be able to provide for yourself at the very least? In a marriage, like hopefully it's a dual providing. But where are you financially, and what steps do you need to take? So I think sometimes, like, if you're like, you're college students, so you've probably got debt, and that might not be the reason to wait. Like, we're not going to get married till we pay off all our student debt. But what processes do you have in place that you can walk through together? And is there a plan? Like,
That's good.
Yeah, it's just a sign of maturity, honestly, in some ways, financial maturity. And if you don't have that, you should cultivate it before you get married, and then continue to cultivate it as you grow together as a couple.
Like, we were given advice to not get married when we wanted to get married, because I was in debt, because we weren't financially stable, you could argue, but we had a plan, which is why then other advice we got from other people we trusted was, no, you can get married because you have a plan. Like, I worked 3 part-time jobs our first year of marriage because I was going to make sure that we had a place to stay and food, like the bare minimums. Yeah. So we had a plan moving forward to figure it out.
Well, and even some of it is like, some people's idea of financial stability is different than others.
Oh, yeah.
So someone might be listening, and they're like in their dorm, they're living in a college apartment, sleeping on a sleeping bag on the floor, eating Doritos for every meal, and they're like, yeah, I'm financially stable, I've got $0, but I'm making it every month. Whereas like, you might be marrying into a relationship where your significant other doesn't want that reality. So it's like, what is financial stability, and at least having that conversation and being willing to compromise on those things.
Right.
And the last one that I would add, if you guys have others, you can jump back in, is just like, the season of life matters practically. Because we have a lot of college students that listen, one of the questions that we've been asked, and there's different opinions, and it's not black and white, but is it okay to get married in college? And the answer is yes, it's okay to get married in college, but typically for most couples, it's probably wiser to wait until post-college. Reasons for that are, like, I've just seen firsthand what it looks like to try and wrestle with new community that you're trying to cultivate with your spouse at the same time as old community of friends, that college has this tendency to be more about friends than anything else. They become your family in college. And so when you're pulled out of that friend group for larger periods of time because you have to invest in your marriage, that will damper your college experience. It'll damper your college friendships. And so it's not a no, but if it's like you're a college junior trying to decide if you should get married before your senior year or if you should date one more year and get married right after you graduate, a lot of times I'm going to advise you to wait that extra year if you guys can. If you're able to do that and it makes sense for you, that's going to be an advantage to you. As you graduate college, start a new season of life, you get to start that new season of life together rather than trying to get into the mess of the murkiness of your college lives and merging those together. I mean, it's not black and white, but that's just
definitely not black and white.
An opinion that I have.
Important. Well, these are checks. These are things to talk about and process through.
Yeah. So there you go. Are you ready to get married or not? So
I think I am.
Ben would love to do all of your weddings as soon as.
Listen, I would actually. I love doing weddings. I love doing prenatal counseling, but I have a boundary set around how many weddings I do a year.
Same. So Jaena, she would love to do
licensed.
Yeah. So if you're getting married, let us know. Someone at the church, I'm sure, can do your wedding. Otherwise, we love you. Let us know if you have other specific questions. But otherwise, peace out.
See ya.